All right, Andrei Sannikov is the former foreign minister for Belarus. He was a candidate in the 2010 presidential election in Belarus. And then he was arrested by the KGB for peacefully protesting at a demonstration after the elections. He was beaten by police, he was tortured, and he was held incommunicado for 2 months. Andrei, I'm always in awe of the opportunity to speak to you. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you. Thank you.
This week, Alexander Lukashenko has been pretty cagey, announcing suddenly military inspections, a joint military task force with Russia on the country's western border. And he said that this was in a direct response to a clear threat to Belarus from Kiev and its backers in the West. What is going on with Lukashenko? What is he signaling here?
He's scared, really scared. And if you saw him talking to the Security Council, you know, when he's scared, he's gathering around uniforms. And when he gathers around uniforms and with big stars, with people who are loyal to him, but maybe not very competent enough in military skills and others. So if he has such a meeting, then he's scared, really scared. And if you see his body language, it does tell. So he's scared because despite this horrible offensive of Russians, missile attacks on civilian objects,
Horrible.
It is really horrible, and actually that is also not a coincidence that Lukashenko was holding this meeting immediately after the attack. Despite this, he I think has the information about the real successes of Russian army in Ukraine, and he hears Ukrainians and not only Ukrainians and the West warning him that if he puts the boots of the Belarusian soldiers on Ukrainian soil, there will be immediate reaction. So I think that, this is nothing new, by the way, this joint group, military group, it is in the military doctrine. But these people, I mean, Lukashenko and Putin, they're really criminals and don't care even about their own laws and regulations, because to deploy this joint group, military group, they need a decision of the Supreme Council of the so-called Union State. There was nothing. And so Putin does not even consult Lukashenko when he takes decision. I'm sure that Putin didn't even warn him about this massive missile attack on Ukraine.
I'm confused about the actual ground situation in Ukraine when it comes to Belarus, because initially we saw Russian forces in February crossing into Ukraine from Belarus. And then they were even saying over the last couple of days, when Putin launched this barbaric response to the attack on the Crimean bridge targeting civilian areas, that a lot of the missiles and some of these drones, the Iranian unmanned drones, were coming out of Belarus. Has Belarus been a launch pad continually for Russian forces, for the Air Force, for drones? And in fact, are they escalating their participation now?
I think that nobody asks Lukashenko. It's really a launch pad. It's been a launch pad for a long time. And even more, if Lukashenko was gone in 2020, there would be no war. But unfortunately, the world didn't recognize the dangers of continued preservance of this horrible regime in Belarus for the future threats to international security. So yes, it does continue to be a launch pad. I think that flight missions are, the Belarusian authorities, including Lukashenko, are not informed about flight missions of Russian airplanes.
But they are, whether they're informed or not, they are still coming out of Belarus.
Yeah, absolutely. But Lukashenko is he is a co-aggressor. It was defined several times by United Nations, by European Union, by world leaders. And but what I'm saying, that he is still he continues to deny that he is the participant of the war. He says, yes, we're taking, I mean, participant of these attacks. Lately he admitted that he is part of the war on the side of Russia, but he continues to claim that no, but we are not fighting Ukrainians, it's Russians. So this is the kind of position, I don't know, very, very, even not acrobatic, it is something the impossible position to continue to stay in.
Is he preparing an escalation? Is he preparing to wade deeper into the conflict in Ukraine?
I'm sure Putin is preparing escalation. As I said, Putin don't ask Lukashenko. So what will happen next? I'm afraid that there will be those mobilized so-called soldiers, which are not soldiers, but criminals and all kind of people, but not regular army, will be entering Belarus, and it will be the entrance of the Russian wealth en masse in Belarus. And after that, they will probably preparing new offensive on Kiev and in the south, because from the territory of Belarus, you could attack Ukraine from two directions. And then the next stage will be Lukashenko will be ordered to join this operation, put in the boots of soldiers on Ukrainian territory.
Okay, so I want to be clear. You believe that very soon Belarus could actually order its army to participate directly in the war against Ukraine. He could be asked by President Putin, and that's an army of about 60,000. And with that, I have lost you.
I think that Putin will.
Okay, it's connected again. I assume our recording is just going on. Are you still there?
So
I completely lost you, but sorry about that. I can re-ask the question if you like.
Okay.
To be clear then, Andrei, you believe that Belarus is about to enter the war potentially directly against Ukraine by Lukashenko ordering this army of roughly 60,000 soldiers to take up arms against Kiev?
To be clear, Dana, it is Putin's scenario. I think that, yes, entering the Belarusian territory with those mobilized people to deploy them on the territory of Belarus. And then the next stage will be ordering Lukashenko. It's not Lukashenko who will order, it's Putin who will order Lukashenko to use Russian, Belarusian army against Ukraine on the ground. And Ukraine could be attacked from two directions. There could be an offensive on Kiev, as we saw in February, and there could be the southern direction, for example, Lviv. So that is this scenario of Putin, and I think that that is what developed under this so-called mobilization, that it is Stalin-Zhukov approach, that use this cannon fodder and use these barbaric missile strikes, and then we will demand the Ukraine to surrender, which is again, you know, the next stage of Russian madness and Kremlin madness and Putin madness, because it will not happen, definitely. Ukrainians have proven to be much more skillful soldiers than Russians. They have better strategy, and they're defending their own land.
If Lukashenko is prepared to enter the war directly, I mean, more directly than he has in terms of boots on the ground versus aircraft using Belarus as a launch pad, Russian aircraft, why has he waited this long, do you think?
Because he is scared, as I told you. He is scared because the army was not involved in politics in Belarus. The leadership, yes, the commanders of the administration, I mean, like ministers of defense and all the kind of military top brass, which is very closely connected with Russia. And so he is afraid first that Russia, they will be obeying Russia's orders, not his orders, I mean the top brass of the army. Second, that the army will aim the arms against him, because the army today consists of those people who were taking part in protest in 2020. And that is the majority of the population. It's not some people, it's majority of the population. And those young people are today in the army, and they continue to hate Lukashenko as much as they hated him when they were civilians. So that he's scared for. And he also knows, and he is doing this deliberately, I think, although he knows that it is very dangerous for him, that he's, in this way, he is making Belarusian territory and his own residences, houses, locations, a legitimate target for Ukrainian armed forces. He is, in other words, he is trying to preserve power. He is making Belarus a very obvious target for the strikes from the territory of Ukraine.
Would Ukraine go after Belarus directly, do you think, and would they be justified in doing so if Lukashenko moves his army, directly onto the ground in Ukraine?
I think that they could go directly even now, when there will be intensified attacks, missile attacks from the territory of Belarus. They have all the rights to prevent it.
So why haven't they?
Well, I think that they try to demonstrate more wisdom than Russians. They don't want escalation without, let's say, having strength enough to continue this kind of war with Russia and Belarus. They don't want to have more victims and to attack the territory of Belarus, because they know that Belarusian people are very supportive of Ukrainian fight against Russia, very supportive, majority. The situation in Belarus after 2020 is even worse for Lukashenko, because he is hated, and that is why we have arrests on a daily basis. It is a horrible situation. People are in prison, more than 4,000 prisoners, but it shows how scared he is. He cannot stop. He thinks that even the students, young students or pensioners like 70 plus years, or people, disabled people are arrested because he sees that they are threatening him. So that is why the Ukrainians probably are prepared to do this, but they are very much reserved and very much logical in what they are doing on this front. And besides, there's still no movement of Russian forces, of significant movement on the Belarusian territory. When it starts, then we will see what will happen.
And do you think that Lukashenko may find himself very vulnerable at that point?
He is vulnerable. He is already vulnerable, because I told you that he is afraid, first, that he is afraid of Putin, who could give orders. If Lukashenko disobeys, he can give orders very easily to remove him. And he's afraid of his own people and of Ukrainians. So he is extremely vulnerable.
Andrei Sannikov, always good to talk to you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Always good to talk to you all as well. Thank you.